What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Honest Tattooer Podcast. My name is Jon Mesa. I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Truiano.
Hey, how you doing?
G Money.
What's up, guys?
And our very special guest. What's up, Joe?
How you doing, guys? I'm super excited to be here.
Great to have you. So for those that don't know, you let them know your name, where you're from, and how you're involved in tattooing, and a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Swanson, been in the business since '96, August. So 28 years as a tattooer.
Wow.
And started in Monterey. I currently live in Denver, but likely planning to move to HB, Huntington Beach.
Huntington Beach.
Down in SoCal.
That's sweet.
California.
I can't wait to get back to the water. I spend most of my life in Northern California. And so I'm excited to be here. I also work, what brought me to New York, not just this podcast, but I'm also working for Tattoo Pro, which is the shop software, number one tattoo shop software out there. And I got linked up with those guys. And so we're crushing it, and it's an incredible tool for tattoo shops. And so, yeah, we've been making the rounds and just sharing what we got.
And talking about Tattoo Pro, a shout out to all of our sponsors, Tattoo Smart, Tattoo Pro, and Steadfast Tattoo Supplies. They're all amazing products that can help your tattoo life be a little bit better. And the way to support the podcast is one, by visiting our website or joining our Patreon, but always to support our sponsors. And before we dive into the episode, I want to put you guys on to two killer books that we got from Schiffer Publishing. And the first one is from Brian Kelly, a tattooer he's actually from the US, but he actually tattoos in Berlin. He's been tattooing out there for a very long time. Oh. And I'm going to pass it on to you guys so you guys can check him out.
I mean, I've been looking at this book the last couple of days, but
man, it's, tattoo books are an amazing way to kind of snap out of a rut when you're creative and you're kind of stuck on something, or just to find other ways to find inspiration. And I think it's awesome to see a book like his that has a lot of like very traditional imagery and a lot of things that are just classic, iconic designs kind of just being redone and through his voice. And I think that that's kind of like the beautiful thing about like classic tattoo flash, right? Like you can tell that some of his flash designs are inspired by the very, very classics, right? But you're getting his take. And then I think as a tattooer now, you can look at his work and get your own take, which is now like, I think it happens in music all the time, where it's somebody, when you hear a riff or a song, you're like, oh man, that sounds like something. And then you learn that that's like already like two lineages down of a version of it. And I think that's something that tattoo artists can do with our work.
Yeah. I feel like that happened back in the day too. Like I've had conversations back when Lyle Tuttle was still alive, and did a long 3-hour interview with him.
R.I.P.
at
Lyle
one point.
Tuttle.
Yeah, R.I.P. What a great dude, a classic entertainer, tattooer, and he would talk about that fact that flash would get passed around. So if you knew somebody, the way that you got to look at some design sheets was they would send them to you, and I would think that they were redrawing them, but probably making them a little bit their own, even though it was that classic imagery. So I would imagine that's been happening, inspiration and then re-execution, new inspiration, re-execution of the same stuff over and over.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And the second book that I'll put you guys on is this Maud Stevens Wagner, Mona Lisa of American Tattoo. And this book is actually pretty sweet too. If you're more into like a history of tattooing, like this is something you definitely want to pick up. Maud would be considered like the first lady tattooer of the USA, allegedly. But I mean, as far as, we can track people down, and that's ultimately, what history.
What's funny too is before I was reading that book, I was thinking to myself, we've probably all seen this image at least once
it's
or twice.
It's so iconic.
Very
but
cool.
Probably no one really knows who this lady is.
Who this lady is.
So definitely if you're interested in your tattoo history, this is a cool read.
Oh, absolutely. Let me check that out. This is a well-made book right here.
Yeah.
But that book is awesome. It has not only a combination of like just tattoo history photos, and it also has some really good
It's like newspaper articles.
Yes, newspaper articles awesome. And just like oral history that's been passed down through family members and things like that, that are involved with everybody that's on the book. So definitely one that you guys should check out if you can. I think buying tattoo books is one of those things that supporting tattooing in the most positive of ways. Like there's a lot of ways you can kind of put stuff out there, but checking out amazing books like this, it's like, do that, support tattooing.
It's the best way to preserve the tattoo history as well.
So we got an email from a guy from Australia who wanted to be on the show. And when I told him, I was like, hey, if you want to come to New York, that'd be great, but we don't do any like virtual episodes. He's like, yeah, that's cool. And then he goes, is there any like one piece of advice that you'd be able to give yourself if you were to go back and, tell yourself something? And my first thing was, man, I wish that I learned more tattoo history when I was younger.
Yeah.
There's just so much out there that I don't know. And I feel like now being almost 20 years in, like I feel like a poser that I don't really know as much as I should. So I really wish that when I was younger, first getting into it, I learned as much as I possibly could. So if there's anybody out there who's starting to get into tattooing, definitely learn as much as you can right now.
Learn as much as you can about the history. Definitely does a lot for you. And I think like as far as like how your work will grow, it'll put it in a better direction over time.
For sure. Yeah, I was fortunate to have Ed Hardy's Tattoo Time magazines like put in my hands like week one. It was basically like, look at these, hang around the shop, talk to the artists, and it was impactful. Still to this day, I remember seeing that big blue back piece of the hot air balloon that Hardy did and just being blown away by it. If you don't know which one I'm talking about, like go get those books.
Go look for it.
And look for it. And you will be blown away. It still holds up to today. And I remember seeing these new up and comers like Higgs and, Eddie Deutsch, who I have a piece from. That was one of the other things my mentor said. Shout out Steve Hendricks. He's like, if you do anything, you're in California, go get tattooed by Eddie Deutsch. And I don't regret it to this day. I love it. I got tattooed at 222 and it was amazing, So I agree with that wholeheartely. Yeah. Go look at the history. And we were just talking before the podcast about Amon Dietzel. Like you look at a book like that and it's so it's different and still classic at the same time. And you go, wow, this guy had a different approach and super inspiring.
For sure. Cool. Well, Schiffer Publishing, right?
Schiffer Publishing.
Thank you guys over at Schiffer Publishing for sending these books. They're super helpful and hopefully more people get into them.
This book kicks ass.
Yeah.
This is a nice book.
I know. Me and G Money have a saying that by just buying the books, you're absorbing tattoo energy and tattoo power. Your meters are just going, just going up a little higher. It's organic. It's organic energy. You're getting that tat chi.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
That was perfect. Tat chi.
Tat chi.
Steadfast Tattoo Supply, owned and operated by professional working tattoo artist Frankie Porcelli, demanding top-performing materials, from the highest quality pigments and medical supplies to tailor-made needles and cartridges with true line weights. Steadfast also specializes in custom machines built from scratch in-house and offers professional or group machine building seminars. Steadfast does everything to keep you and your clients covered. Steadfast, supplies that work as hard as you do.
If you're a tattoo artist who uses an iPad, you're going to want to watch this. Since 2016, Tattoo Smart has been curating an incredible collection of digital flash. We work with the best artists in every style to make reference material that you can use to save time and make your clients happy. Now's your chance to fill your iPad with Tattoo Smart's digital tools. So make sure you log in at tattoosmart.com and fill your cart with our best-selling flash, toolkits, and 3D body parts.
So where did you start tattooing?
I started in Monterey. So Monterey, California, August of 96. I had a buddy, Jeremy Swan, shout out Jeremy, works at, owns a shop, a Broken Art Tattoo in LA. I just got to see him a couple months ago and still doing great friend of mine, but he put me on to the business. He said, hey, Steve is about to hire some more artists and wants to bring on an apprentice. He goes, I think you do great. Jeremy and I had been skating a lot in Santa Cruz at the old Derby skate park. And I'd gotten tattooed by him a few times. And he said, bring some drawings by, and meet Steve and meet the, people at the shop and see what he says. So I brought some crappy. I mean, I had been an artist my whole life, but I didn't know tattoo style stuff. And so I just brought some, couple drawings that I had whipped up over the next, last week. And, I think I made more of a connection with Steve personally than my art, and Jeremy, and I was being vouched for by a buddy. Yeah. So, started there, and I would say I have a hybrid traditional apprenticeship. He definitely showed me how to make needles, showed me how to build machines. We built up 2 Jonesy, one liner, one shader.
Cool.
And I did 3 tattoos, under his supervision while he was watching. I did an eagle flying over some mountains. I can't remember the second one. And then I did a piece of tribal too, which was great. And then he was like, okay, go make money and ask questions as you need to ask questions. And so, and don't get it in over your head, which I definitely got in over my head on some things, like some crazy Celtic armbands and shit.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. I had good people around me who were attentive to those questions and helped guide me. And then I was there for about 10 months and ended up going to Minnesota, where I had grown up, and I finished up a business degree there. And while I was there, I was tattooing as well So
you went from California to Minnesota.
Yeah.
All I know about Minnesota is that Minnesota's cold.
Well, yep.
How was that shift and change?
Yeah, it was, I had grown up in Minnesota. So 18, I left and got to California, said, I need to skateboard, I need to surf, went to Santa Cruz, was there, learned to tattoo in Monterey. And then my parents kind of made me an offer. They said hey, you're hopping around doing this little college tour. Why don't you come back to Minnesota and finish up your degree?
Yeah.
And we'll go from there. So they had built a unit in the basement of their house. And so my wife at the time, we had a new baby, and we moved back there. And
cool.
Yeah, I went to college, finished up that business degree, tattooed as much as I could for those 2 years. And that's where I would say that I got my chops up with tattooing. It was in Minnesota in those 2 years. It was super busy, college town. I was working with a great guy, again, RIP, Tom Generu, did incredible Japanese full body work, influenced by Don Nolan and Ed Hardy and that, sort of lineage. And
would you say that being in your hometown during that period of your career kind of helped to establish connections or anything like that to kind of get your name out there and just start your business? Or would you say that it was just being in the new tattoo place and just going to that route?
Being in the tattoo place, but then being at college. So I was tattooing and I wasn't fully new. So, and I had picked it up pretty quickly. So, and I was really into traditional stuff. I had sort of tried to already begin to develop a style a little bit. And then look, I'm a baby of 90s tattooing. You do it anything that walks through the door.
Yeah.
And so this is why I say this is where I got my chops up, because on a Saturday you would walk in and there'd be, a room full of people, consent forms already signed, ready to go. Mm-hmm. And I was full-time in college with a little baby as well, commuting from where I was living. And so a lot of times I didn't have time to draw up some of the stuff that I was doing.
How old were you at this time?
I was, 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Damn, you sound so much more mature than I am. At 25. At 25, I was doing some dumb shit.
I was still doing some dumb shit, but I got married at 21 and had a baby at 24. So I had a little 1-year-old and 25 trying to figure out this business degree and working. I knew I loved tattooing. I was captivated by it. And so a lot of those Saturdays were filled with me drawing stuff on and having to figure it out quick and learn drawing essentials. Like, how do I become way more efficient with my drawing and what's important in this drawing to make sure that I can tattoo it really well.
Yeah.
And what can I leave behind and fill it in while I'm there, you know, on the skin. And so I did that for 2 years. And then at the end of that, around the end of that time, went out to LA at a convention. I knew things were coming up to where I was going to be done with school, graduated. I knew I wanted to come back to California or somewhere. I didn't know exactly. And so went to LA to the Inkslingers Ball with that tattoo shop, Rising Phoenix. And that was impactful too. It was, I knew I was kind of looking, you know, for connections for maybe a job. I met, Ernie Gosnell, and he owned a tattoo shop up in Portland. So I was kind of, you know, thinking about that. I talked to him. That didn't end up working, but I saw like, what's his name from Sacramento? Eric Hogan, rest in peace again.
Wow.
And met him there. He was walking around filming, you know, on a camcorder. And you know who else I saw in the, I don't know which book it is, talking about tattoo books. Like there's a book about Sailor Jerry, and it's got the little one pager or a couple photos of the doctor that Sailor Jerry did the back piece on in like 4 consecutive days. And it's like a big dragon with wind behind it.
Dang.
I saw that guy. Whoa. And he was old. I mean, he was an old guy at that time. But yeah, just met people and had that experience. And
Legendary.
I remember, what's that?
I said, that's legendary.
Yeah.
Bro, it was,
I think tattoos have that effect, right? Where you like, especially when you like see something like on a magazine and it impacts you and it stays in your brain.
Yeah.
But the day that you get to see that in the wild,
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's kind of like a special day, especially when like, you know, I remember I went to the Ink and Iron Tattoo Convention and I saw this dude that had like a Hula Girl by Carlos Torres. It's like this like beautiful, realistic, like girl just with the hula, everything, dude, and with the lace, dude, incredible, just incredible. And the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, that looks just as good. And when you get those two things together, you're like, damn, that looks just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
And like in person, you're just like, damn, that's good.
Yeah. You know who had that effect on me was Jesse N. So I went and I saw Jesse N at a tattoo convention, and I was just talking to him at the Empire State Show just a few weeks ago. And when I first saw his work, and I knew that it was mostly lined with a machine and then put in with Tabori, and it was so dynamic on the skin. It was so well done. Everything was saturated super well and faded super well. And it was one of those moments where you just look at it and you're just like, whoa, like, you know, like that dude knows how to tattoo. Yeah. And still to this day, I mean, he was, you know, doing work at the Empire State Show that's just impeccable, you know, so incredible. And super nice guy too. I had him.
Super nice guy, yet super intimidating there.
Yeah, totally.
Super nice, but super intimidating.
Yeah.
Especially because like the amount of respect that the people that travel with him, you know, like his group.
Little entourage.
Oh, dude.
Oh, yeah.
That adds to it.
They devote their lives to the guy.
Yeah. And there, you know, if you are, so I'm talking to him, you know, I know him from a long time ago, and I had him on my podcast with Sullen Radio. And, you know, so we had developed a little bit of a friendship. I'd gone out and visited him at his shop, and, you know, just super inspiring. Yeah. And, you know, that you see you connected with them, and then they're bowing to you as you're walking away. And it's,
you're like, whoa, this is a lot.
Whole nother thing.
It's a whole nother experience level. For sure.
You know,
like if you apprentice for someone, you have a level of commitment, but if you apprentice for Jess Yen, your level of commitment is just way more
up there.
Yeah. Leave everything behind. This is what you're doing.
And I would imagine someone like him doesn't
everything
doesn't choose an apprentice lightly too. Like if you get chosen to be his apprentice, it's like an honorary thing.
It's an honor thing.
Yeah. He's super humble too. You know, that was one of the things that impacted me as well, as far as like how to carry yourself around other artists. You know, he told a story on when I interviewed him about, he drew this back piece, and we'd have to go back. These episodes here's a little drop, dime drop here. Sullen Radio is going to be re-released on the Sullen TV channel.
Oh, that's
coming
cool.
up soon.
Nice.
Because they're all sitting on Apple podcasts and not getting heard. And there's a ton of gems like these stories in there. So super cool. I was talking to Jeremy the other day about it, and we're re-releasing them all. But he was telling a story about how he had drawn this back piece, and there was a couple layers to it, obviously. And I can't remember if it was like fire or maybe like smoke behind the fire or something, that there was a layer that he was not quite sure about. And he will ask his apprentices, what do you think? And one of his, they have to tell him, they can't just pander to him. They have to tell him what they really think. And one said, like, this is what I feel. You should take this out, remove this piece and do this. And he's like thinking about it, and he decides to do it.
Yeah.
Like, how humble is that to go, oh, this is my apprentice, but I can still learn from them. I'm gonna actually not even just hear what they say, but I'm going to do it. And then it makes the tattoo better. Like, man, that story blew me away. I was so impressed by that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can attest to that, because there's been plenty of times where I'll design a tattoo and then my client will be like, could we change this? Could we do that? And like, I'll take their advice. And at the end of the tattoo, I'm like, oh man, that was such a good choice. Like, I'm glad you spoke up.
Yeah.
It's so interesting when somebody has like what you might consider like less of a visual vocabulary than you as an artist. But sometimes I feel like we get too like locked into these things, these ideas that we're drawing, and it takes them sort of not like, I hope nobody takes this wrong, but like more of a simplistic visual mind to see it in a different way than what we see it.
Yeah. I agree, man. I just finished watching a show called The Rehearsal on HBO, and it's just insane, right? But the whole thing about like being able to speak up to someone that you can consider an authority is very, very hard for people.
Yeah.
They deep dive kind of into that, in the term of like a lot of plane crashes happen because the pilot's doing something weird, like the captain, and then the I don't know,
co-pilot?
The co-pilot, right, goes like, hey, I think that we should pull up. And the captain goes like, no, we're not doing that. Or shut up, you don't know anything. Like, something. And they're like, okay. And then they just fucking die. Right. But they also have the command to be like, nah, dude, we're not dying. I'm going to pull this up so we don't die. Right. But because they're so like ingrained of like, that's your captain, and you don't like, argue with the captain, then a lot of accidents end up happening.
Yeah.
So this guy goes into a deep dive of like, what's behind the psychology of why there's people that are willing to say like, nah, I think like you're making a mistake here to somebody else. Like,
wow.
Even when they're asked, like, that they use as example of like, you remember the guy that they made a whole movie about it, the guy that crashed the plane on like Hudson, on the Hudson River, right? So they play the audio of that, and the guy goes like, do you think that we can make it? And the guy goes like, I don't know. And he's like, well, do you have any ideas? Because we're going to go down. And he actually asked his co-pilot, like, do you have any ideas of what we could do right now? The guy's like, nothing. He's like, all right, we're going down on this river. He's like, well, we're going to crash land into the river, dude. Because they hit a bird, on the way up.
I think that's, there's two sides to that coin though. There's the subordinate who has to be willing to step up, speak their voice, and then overcome that fear of like, oh, I gotta like tell my authority that this is what I think.
Yeah.
But then the authority has to be able to listen to the subordinate.
Correct.
Yeah, 100%.
And take that advice. Because if that guy won't do that, then you speaking up is useless.
So the guy ends up coming up with this really weird thing that like, so if people think that they're acting, they're willing to do things they normally wouldn't do. Right.
Okay.
As there's something, so it's a lot of weird shit that happens on this show.
Weird.
But it's actually true. If people think they're acting, they're willing to do something. Or if they're being told like, oh no, this is not real. This is acting, right? Something as simple as like, hey, if you press that button, that person on the other side of the room is going to be in pain. But don't worry, they're just acting, right? How many people would be like, all right, I'm gonna go press that button right now, dude. Yeah, like not really hurting anybody. And even though if you're on the other side, they're like, stop, please, it hurts. They're like, no, dude, they're acting. Just keep going. Most people would just keep going because they think it's all an act. Dude, it's so weird. But like the effect that like people like can role play that idea and be able to like speak up to somebody whether and I've had that with clients that they'll tell me they're like, oh man, like I didn't really want this like that, but the guy just kept going and I just didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. And I think it's true what you're saying. Like it needs to be up to us to be able to kind of let the person know and make them feel over and over like, hey, you can tell me anything at any point in time. Like, don't feel weird if, and I think like doing things on the spot, like Gabe does this a lot, while he's kind of working along with every piece of the puzzle, and being like cool with the clients. At the end, the client's like stoked. They feel like they were part of the process, so they feel like they're committed, right? Other than just being like, I'm driving here, don't tell me nothing,
I found that with like placing stencils a lot, that people would have such a reservation with. I would have to reiterate to them like, hey, I'm going to place this, and if you don't like it, we can move it. It's like some alcohol and a few wipes, like it's okay. And because they would get so stuck into, you'd say, hey, do you like that? Good spot. And they'd be like, yeah. And you're like, buddy, it's okay to move it if you want to. Well, then, yeah. Could we move it up like a quarter inch? You're like, yeah, absolutely. You can move it up. I wonder if that's like, do you think with how much tattooing is out there now in like more visually in the mainstream that more clients are getting the guts to say stuff or coming in with that idea that I can inform on this?
Man, I have a client that I've been doing a tattoo for him, and he takes pictures of his tattoo and he colors it in to show me versions. What do you think about this version?
Wow.
And I'm like, I hate it. But I've made him feel comfortable enough and like, I don't like anything's game. There's at the end of the day, I'm going to do something that you're going to like and that's going to make you happy. Mm-hmm. So feel free to show me any wild ideas you have. Yeah. But we have enough rapport that I can tell him like, I hate that.
Yeah.
And I'll do that if you really want it, but I'm going to hate it. And they're like, I don't want him to hate it.
Do I know who that? I
yeah, you know that.
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about, but like, I don't find that, I'm like, it's fine. It's their tattoo, if they want to spend their free time doodling ideas, I'm like, that's fine.
Yeah, it's their tattoo. That statement right there,
it's their tattoo.
That's where this shirt comes from.
It's for me.
Yeah, it's for me. The upside down believe in Edwardian script that is like for them. Do you know how many upside down believes and upside down crosses that I did on girls' wrists?
Yeah.
Because it's for them.
Yeah.
And this is, I sort of wanted to pay homage to that because this is what day and age we live in now. It's the upside down tattoo like is okay to do as long as you like it. I'm okay with that. I'll put it on you. Yeah, do you like it that way? Are you going to be happy with it?
That's so funny. I didn't even realize that's a shirt that you're wearing right now. Years ago, I'm going to say like 10, 15 years ago, I made a one-off shirt that was just that, but it said, but it's for me, upside down. And no one knew what it was except for other tattooers. And whenever they would see it, like they would just, oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate it, man. Now you're seeing it. Yeah. This was something like, I was at a tattoo convention like a couple months ago and I had just started with Tattoo Pro and, they have a little bit of merch, but they hadn't done anything like real tattoo specific. And I was like, guys, we should do this. And they're like, what do you mean? Why? And I'm like, okay, let me explain it to you. And I explained, what it was. And there was a period of time where people were taking a lot more agency in what they wanted and what they were willing to tell you or ask you to do. And I knew that some tattooers would get it and that some people wouldn't, but it still would be eye-catching because it's upside down. And when I printed them, the printer hit me back and they're like, hey, your
I think this is upside down.
Are you okay with that? And I'm like, that's exactly what I want.
It's for them.
It's for them, right. I can look at it and go, I like it.
I like it. I can
it's
read
for
it.
me.
It's pretty.
So Yeah, I brought you one, John, and then
good.
yep, totally, and I'll send you guys a couple too.
I would love
Thanks.
one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Man, I don't. We have a walk-in shop, and there's so many people that sometimes feel that they don't want to do certain tattoos because of. They're like, oh, but it's upside down. But ultimately, if the person pushes hard enough, I'm like, you're gonna get the one you wanted, dude.
You're gonna get it,
Right.
man. Yeah.
Everybody gets the tattoo they want.
Yeah.
and,
the client-
and deserve.
And
If the
deserve.
client's pushing hard enough and you don't want to do it, they're just going to go somewhere and get it done anyway.
Absolutely.
So you might
That's
as well
it.
just make the money off of it.
yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like if you educate them, like I would try to educate somebody about, okay, when you're standing in line at the grocery store and you have your arm down and you're holding your grocery bags, the lady behind you that is your looks like your grandma is going to think you have an upside down cross. She's going to think
comes to
you
crosses.
are a Satanist.
Satan.
And so, but if you want that, like, look, I'm okay with it. I'll do it. But I just want you to be like, let's think outside the box here just for a second. And do you still want that? Yeah, it's for me. Okay, cool.
Right.
Like, let's go.
All right.
I got you.
Show up to Sunday mass. You're gonna have to get it decommissioned.
So, yeah, get a decommission, bro. Man.
I feel like tattooing kind of went through that too in a more of a greater way, like where there was a lot of when all the watercolor stuff started happening.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And, you would have to explain to somebody, well, okay, that picture looks great, but it's freshly done. It's in 3 to 5 years. It's not going to look like that. So I'm happy to do it for you that way. Just understand that in 3 to 5 years, you're going to come back and get a touch up, and you may have to get a touch up every few years because it's just the way that the tattooing when placed on the skin is going to be. So, but it's an explanation thing. If you're explaining it to them and they go in with the knowledge, like you're not holding the knowledge back, you're explaining it to them and they go in with that knowledge that, okay, I get it. I still like it though. And I want it. Yeah. Then I got to a point where I was just like, okay, yeah, they are going to go down to the shop next door.
Yeah.
And now more so than ever, there's 4 of them within 2 blocks, other options for them. So let's do it. Let's make them happy and do the best.
I used to work with a guy who was so particular about his reputation that whenever he would come across a client who wanted what they wanted, regardless of his advice, he would on the release form write extra notes. This is the advice that I gave them. They declined, my advice, and they still want to get this tattoo. And then he would make them sign off again on his advice.
On advice.
If they wanted to write a name or do a saying, they would have to write down each letter, whatever there was, to make sure that the spelling was right. They'd have to sign off on the spelling to make sure that he was completely cleared of everything.
I used to do that actually.
So they can't come back and be like, you didn't tell me
Whenever
this.
I had to do any lettering or anything like that, get a copy of what we're tattooing and we're going to staple that to the sheet. Like,
It's good idea. too.
Yeah. So
like
you
this
remember.
this is what you got. This
Yeah.
is what you wanted. Bam.
We just onboarded a big tattoo shop up in Michigan that with Tattoo Pro, and they had extra, we get the consent forms, digital consent forms. There's other digital waivers that we can add to the system for them. And they had a few different waivers about names, about dates, about very specific imagery, like let's, as an example, one of the examples the guy up there gave was a Boba Fett that came in. It was supposed to be on this, on the right arm. And
I already know what this is.
they flipped it because it looked better on this arm.
And the
fit
thing was
better.
in the wrong
Yes,
side. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, the thing was on the wrong side, dude.
Right,
I know
man.
because I
And so I think somebody caught it before they did it,
Good.
but they had, up their sort of protections by putting waivers in place for any of that stuff. Just so, and I think they had a couple other horror stories that you have those things if you're tattooing long enough. This is a big volume shop. It was pretty interesting but I think more and more shops are doing that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, smart.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let somebody die on their own sword.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to do it, just sign off on it. It's okay with me.
Correct.
For sure.
100%.
Correct.
Yeah. I remember doing or not doing the one tattoo that I ever said I wouldn't do was I was working I'd finished up that business degree and I ended up moving out to San Francisco or the Bay Area. And I was working at Picture Machine Tattoo on Geary in San Francisco. Insane. Yeah. Like I got some stories about that place. That was fun. And being around Guy Martinuik and Body Graphics up in Reno.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Super fun. Amazing flash. We're still like decked out in Pat's flash when I worked there. But this guy came in, young guy, in his 20s, and he wanted "fuck the Pope" on his arm.
Fuck the Pope, bro.
And I was
Just gonna have to answer.
Did he know that he was going to be telling fuck to every Pope thereafter? Dude? Which maybe that one sucked, but maybe the next one's a cool dude, bro.
Right. Yeah. I was like, man, I sort of like, I'm not into that.
That's a hard one for me to be. I'll be like,
man.
I don't know.
Yeah. And then I turn around and this guy, Matt from Sweden, he was guest spotting at the shop. And I'm like, yo, Matt, you want to do this tat? And he's like, what is it? I'm like, this guy wants "fuck the Pope" on his arm. And he goes, yeah, let's do it.
It was so much harder for you. And then he just had no,
we were
no defense there.
No, we were polar opposites.
Why wouldn't I? Why aren't you doing it?
I heard that guy switch his tattoo to "fuck the Popeyes."
Amazing.
I'd write a letter to Pope Leo and be like, hey, this guy wants me to do this. Is this okay? Do I have to go
give him
he'd be like, well, whatever. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hilarious.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you're good.
Yeah. Sign off at it. Pope, you sign off on this?
You're cool.
I'll do it, buddy.
I'll do it, man.
Yeah.
But I'm just letting you know first. This guy doesn't like you.
This guy is just bringing you up to speed, Pope.
Yeah.
So
I'm good though, right? I'm good.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with Tattoo Pro?
Yeah, I was. So I do some creative consulting also with Mikey Getz with Force of Focus, and helping artists sort of understand how to manage in tattooing these days.
You put this degree to work.
I did, right? 100%. And look, I have a heart for. I love tattooing, and I love tattooers, and I have a heart for people that want to serve other people, and I want to help them out. And I love teaching too. At one point I was a kindergarten art teacher as well. I got a wild that's awesome. Stretch of
that's hard
degrees. Yeah,
that's hard.
It was. And so anyway, so I'm mentoring with Mikey in Force of Focus, and I'm preparing for one of my sessions. And we had been thinking, he and I, what solution do we provide these tattooers to sort of stay organized, to book? And there was a handful of things out there, but we were kind of thinking about like putting a CRM together, maybe like a custom Go High Level or something that we can just, offer. And so I was doing some research and I came across Tattoo Pro using ChatGPT. I love it as a thought partner. And so it said, hey, there's some of these available, and Tattoo Pro was one of them. And I kind of checked them out. They didn't have much presence, but I was like, Mikey, we should probably reach out to these guys. So let's just have a meeting. And so I messaged them. I DM'd them on Instagram. They said, yeah, reach out to my now business partner and CEO, Sylvan. And so I reached out to him, set up a meeting. Mikey and I jumped on there, and we just connected like really quick. And I could tell that they had a heart for small business. Sylvan's been in small business tech for, almost 15 years, helping small businesses thrive. And I loved his vision. I loved his attitude, and it got me thinking, I want to have some more conversations with this guy. And so we connected again a few times and just had great business conversations. And I dug in a little bit to what they were trying to do and what the vision was, where they wanted to take the company, not just, Tattoo Pro, but overall. And he loved the conversations as well, and said, hey, I want you to talk to one of our board members. I talked to Kevin. He said, hey, I want you to talk to our go-to-market advisor, talk to, this guy. And one thing led to another, and they made me an offer, and I had been working for my brother for the last 3 years and in his software company. So he owns a software company called Freedom Soft, and they do a CRM lead generation tool for real estate investors.
What is CRM?
Say that again.
What is CRM?
Client relationship management system. So, and a way to organize your clients basically and keep track of them, follow up with them, make sure that they're all in one place so you can market to them and connect with them. And so I had that experience. I had done program management for him. I had done revenue management and worked a lot in marketing, kind of front to back in the company from marketing all the way through, sales, marketing, customer success and support. And so when I talked to Tattoo Pro, it was kind of a great fit. 28 years in the business. I know a ton of people and I've owned my own shop. I felt the pains of what this software can solve. I remember going into, building this tattoo shop that I owned, and, beautiful pink and maroon walls and, incredible like flash on the wall and, black tile on the countertops. And I would go in there and I would enjoy my days there, just hanging out with good friends, making good art. And over the years, it became a burden for me. And why did it become a burden? It became a burden because I had a stack of paperwork, consent forms that I was trying to put into a text automator to follow up with people, keep them coming into the shop, keep my guys fed. This guy was chirping in my ear about going to Costco to get paper towels. This guy was chirping in my ear about when's my commission coming, and it became a nightmare. Yeah. And so I had felt that pain. And when I had those conversations with Sylvan, I said, wow, they're trying to solve those things that I had felt. And I love it. I know what it means to do that. I have this experience in software as a service and product development, and this 28 years of experience in tattooing. Let me help this company. And so they made me an offer, and it was a good enough, offer to come on as head of growth for them and focus on helping them grow and build and really position ourselves as the number one tattoo shop software out there.
So before you, was there any tattooers involved in the company?
No.
What made them want to market to tattoo artists?
They saw the need. They did a lot of research. They did a lot of research on, Punchy is the mother, the kind of the parent company, and it's what the foundation of the software is built on. And they looked at a bunch of different verticals and, service industry. They knew that that's where they wanted to be. They want to be, what Shopify is for retailers, Tattoo Pro or Punchy's will be for service industry. And they saw this huge need in tattooing, that people were still doing shit analog, still, struggling like I had to stay organized, to keep their staff happy in this day where tattooers are really, they're liberated by movement. They can go to many different shops. They wanted to help create a situation where a shop owner can provide them some real stability and organization. And so they had been really pushing tattooing for maybe, I would say like 18 to 24 months prior to me coming on board. Sylvan had come on as the CEO, now 18 months ago, maybe a little bit more. And, he's, again, super smart guy, Harvard business guy, Georgetown grad, really understands small business and business fundamentals. And so we sort of make this power team of, we understand business and we understand tattooing, and now it's a power play, so incredible.
I think that's where the issue with tattooers adopting new things, like, it's challenging because most of us started a tattoo shop because we just like tattooing.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with my friends and do cool art, just like the beginning of your story.
Yeah.
And then as time passes, all of these responsibilities, no matter what sort of shop you have, whether you have a collective, whether you have like a one-owned, owner shop, or you have like, a street shop, or that the owner doesn't even exist. They don't even know who the owner actually is. It's just owned by somebody.
Yeah.
Like no matter the model, the business model, like all these issues of like, building the relationship with your customers and following up and keeping consent forms and scheduling, they're going to arise.
Yeah.
No matter what model it is.
Right.
And I think a big difficulty for a lot of tattooers is being able to break old models and old habits to be able to adopt new ways to do something that may be more efficient.
Yes.
But it's really, really difficult to break those habits. Yeah. But like,
Loyal to the coil.
I'm loyal to the coil, and I still, I want,
Love all those
paper
wires.
sheets, for consent forms, and I'm gonna still do everything exactly how I've been doing it. And then they realize as the time passes, because it's kind of like, it's like having a leak in your roof. That's a small leak that you choose to ignore.
Yeah.
Like you're like, but it's fine. And then it just keeps passing, just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And by the time that it's like over your head and you're flooded.
Yeah.
And you're either like flooded with stress, flooded with a bunch of artists that are complaining to you or something like that, or flooded because the IRS is coming down to your shop
100%.
because you don't have anything online and you're like, what do I do now?
What do I do now? And look, this is what I liken it to, because I went through this. In 2010, I was beginning to play around with digital drawing. So, iPads, it was Sketchbook, like Sketchbook Pro on some older iPads, and the iPen, the iPencils weren't really good yet. So I was also playing with Wacom tablets. Russ Abbott was a big proponent of that. My buddy Steve Johns was. And so we started playing around over the course of 10, 11, 12, Procreate came around that time, and it got to the point where it was pretty good and you could get some nuance detail into your stencils. And I was a proponent of it. I was talking about it on my podcast. I was saying how much more efficient it was. I was being shit on, about that it's taking the soul out of tattooing. And, my take on it was always, look, I still have to place it on skin. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to make this tattoo drawing more efficient and I can shorten up my time in doing that, and I don't have to go back to the copier 100 times to enlarge and decrease this hand size or face size, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And we had this waterfall moment around I'd say 14 to 16, somewhere right around in that, 18-month period. It was boom. All of a sudden, everybody was using iPads. And if you weren't on an iPad, you were getting left behind. And now look, you can go into any shop, and who's drawing on yellow tracing paper with a red pencil?
This guy right here.
This guy right here.
So I do love that.
It's my gimmick now.
I love it.
See, he got a good shtick, this guy.
It's call machines make noise.
It's interesting. And I'm not throwing shade. I'm just saying because I will jump back and forth sometimes. I do sometimes as well. But, we had this waterfall moment. And the reason I'm telling you this is because we're having that in software for shops. I think right now we're having this waterfall moment where people are in that place where their old habits are dying hard. Yeah. And the shops that are, there's some shops that are trying to piece and duct tape together these solutions, and it's kind of working for them. They know they need to do something, because at some point we'll go over the edge of that Niagara Falls, and you're gonna have to have software in your shop, whether that's because you need to stay organized at scale, or whether that's because MOCRA's coming down on your ass, and you have to have a place to, document all of your ink batch numbers and lot numbers and all of your needle lot numbers.
Oh
and
God, I had to do that in Europe one time. When I did it.
yeah.
It was terrible. Dude. I hated that.
Europe is serious. Those reach, the reach, rules and inks, they're in a struggle over there right now.
Yeah.
And if you listen to, Rob Smead's Business of Tattooing podcast, he had a conversation with Sean Brown, who's on Capitol Hill, talking about this. Sean worked for Eternal and it's serious. Like it could happen here too, where it's such a restriction put on the products that we're using that there's only a handful of them that we can use. And it's regulators that don't know, their head from their ass, that are putting those regulations in place, so I'm heading down at the end of this month to an AFTO conference with Rob and with Sean and with some APT members. And this is where they're talking about this stuff, body art regulations and how it's going to be affected, how it's going to affect our industry and how we can do something about it, because it's for an industry that we all love, it's coming down.
Yeah.
And I think we all have a responsibility to do something about it. So, even just if it's knowledge based, right? Let's understand what's happening. And, that's another thing that we talk about in the software. How do we make it easy for shops and artists not to just stay organized with what's happening now, but how do we make it easy to, somewhat self-regulate themselves and take those pictures of the ink and take the pictures of the needles now, so we can set some standards for what truly is important, not what they think is important to regulate upon us. So yeah, it's fascinating stuff that's going down outside of just like the everyday,
everyday
this
tap
person,
world.
everyday tap world. This person wants believe upside down on the wrist,
Right.
It's fascinating stuff, man.
I feel like it's one of those things that it reminds you of like the old times, right? Where like news got passed on like really, really late. And all of a sudden you're just like, oh, this happened? You're like, what? You're like, yeah, this changed. You're like,
Yeah.
Well, how
didn't
long
even know.
ago was it that we had Ben Shaw on the show and he was talking about all the Mokra situation?
I'd say it's a little bit over a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little over a year ago.
And shout out to Ben. He's doing it. Like he's really, really pushing for people to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And, heavy in the APT. I just did a webinar for the APT about, shop organization and 3 things shops should really need to sort of be aware of.
Yeah.
It's super fascinating. So shout out to those guys who are really trying to make a difference and come together for the greater good of tattooing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Hey, it's a shame that, so Ben's episode that we had was the only virtual episode. This is what we were talking
The
about
one
before.
and only that we've done. That's
Really?
virtual, yeah.
And the reason why we'd never done another one after that was because that was such a logistical nightmare. And we had so many hiccups that we're like, dude, we can never do this again. And unfortunately, because it was such a terrible experience, it didn't really get the views that it deserved, because what he was talking about was so important and everybody really needs to know that what's going on. But it just didn't pan out the way that we wanted.
Yeah. That's what I think also, just, having having a conversation close together, even I was, you were talking, I'm like, look at me leaning into the conversation, it's because little things like that. It happens. It's engaging when we're here, we're together, we're sharing the moment. And I feel like that's, anytime that I watch any show where they do stuff over Zoom, it ends up being like let's say if all 4 of us were over Zoom, it would be fucking terrible.
Yeah.
It's like either a scream match where everybody's doesn't know when you can actually speak. And there's it's, I don't know.
It gets more it definitely gets more difficult. And, I was thinking about this flying here, I flew here to do this, to be in this room. And, shout out, I was talking to Matt before, shout out to you guys I've done a ton of podcasting and this is a job, and I'm not to sound weird, but I'm proud of you guys for doing
thanks,
this.
man.
Thank
and
you.
it's it's really difficult. and it takes a lot of work, and you guys do it consistently at a high fucking level, week after week after week. And it's amazing, guys. Like, I love listening to it, you know, and the span of topics that you guys are comfortable covering is amazing. From technique to design to day-to-day stuff, you know, inside and outside of tattooing. It's so cool.
Appreciate that. And thank you.
One of the comments that we get often that really like makes me feel good about it is when people are like, oh man, this particular subject was so important for me to hear. I really needed that. And sometimes it's something that I might not even really consider like a worthy topic to be talking about, but it resonates with somebody. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad we had that conversation.
I love that. I love the technique conversations. Like I'm listening to you talk about, you know, technique and, you know, different ways of putting in color or putting in, you know, shading. And it's amazing because look, I've done it. So I think, and it like brings up these like warm, fuzzy feelings for me to hear it and to know that I've been in that mode at some point, and to hear the love that you guys have for it. It comes across and it's really refreshing.
Cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. We appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, I think overall, like having messages from you guys whenever I'm out, you know, the other day, I was riding my motorcycle and I stopped by a tattoo shop with somebody I knew, and somebody was sending me a message. They were like, hey man, like it was so nice talking to you. I felt like I was talking like, you're the guy from the podcast and you're like right here. And it's like, and you're so positive, and like, I love all the conversations you guys have, and like, just thank you for doing this. And I'm like, oh man, that feels great, you know? And like, for all you guys that send messages, thank you so much. It means a lot.
Yeah. Positive and negative ones.
Yeah, we love the hate. We love the hate.
That's definitely what I've noticed too. Is you guys don't mind the heat.
No.
Dude, I love it. I love it. It's again another refreshing on the other side of the coin. Another refreshing thing is you guys don't mind taking some of that heat, talking about what you really have conviction about, whether people are going to understand it or not.
As they say, you got to say it with your chest. Whatever you say it with your chest.
You can't make everybody happy, and you're always going to ruffle some feathers. But I mean, I think for the most part, we do a pretty okay job of owning it.
Yeah, you guys do. And look, that comes from wisdom of experience. That comes from, you know, speaking it around and living it here in the shop, just outside of this conversation, you know? And so when it's in the conversation, you can say it with your chest. You can say it with confidence. And the other thing too is like, you know, kind of throwing back to that Jesse N attribute of being humble. Like, I feel like if somebody pressed you on something and was able to put a nice spin on it that you believed, or that was able to change it, they could maybe change your mind on something.
It happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
We've said it plenty of times that we started this podcast with a very different mindset than what we have right now. Just from talking to people and reading the comments, like a lot of the delicate fine line stuff, like we used to be hard pressed, like, no, that you can't do that. And we've had a couple of people on the show who does that work and they do it phenomenally. Like, oh, maybe it can be done. Like,
I love it. That comes across amazing as well. And it's really cool to, I'm vibing out. It's really cool to be here, guys, you know, thank you. And it is different being in the room. I've done a lot of, you know, most of my podcasting has been up until recently when I produced the podcast for my brother, which was in the room. It was all over phone calls and Zoom and, you know, recordings that way. And it took a different sort of understanding on how to have that conversation and nurture, like talking to Jack Rudy over the phone when, you know, he's sitting in his, like, you know, in his old school truck in his garage. And you're like, how do I not fuck this up? You know? And then also talking about technology, like I had 2 conversations with Lyle Tuttle. One in person, which was the better one that got released and still available. And the other one was over a phone call, over, like, you know, I was sitting in my garage. He was in his house, probably on a phone. And, you know, I look back on it and it was so disappointing and so devastating that I hot pulled the SD card out of my recorder, and I lost the entire 2.5 hours of him talking, telling stories about, his beef with Sailor Jerry and how Jerry had his, 1973 Rolling Stone issue like plastered inside the toilet so he could pee on Lyle and shit like that. Yeah, totally. And it was like, I got to ask him, well, how did he feel about that? And, he talked about it, and he talked about all this like cool shit. And man, when I pulled that and I went to look for it and it wasn't there, and then I had to tell him that I lost it.
That sounds even harder.
It was
harder.
And then it took me a couple years, like 2.5 years before he, came around to trusting me enough. I had built a great relationship with Lyle. And I went out, like, as soon as he gave me the yes, I was like, okay,
going.
I went to San Francisco, and I went to his 3-story flat, and we had, grapefruit and vodka and Italian food. And I set up my shit, and he just chopped it up with me for 3.5 hours.
That's rad.
And
great.
It was sick. So yeah, I know how much this takes, and it's amazing. So yeah, kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. And also I want to give a shout out, one more, to Wes, who's been helping us out in the West Coast.
Shout out to Wes.
Thanks
he's
again
a team
for all the help.
of the show,
Thanks,
team of the
Wes.
show. And, he's the unseen hero because he's not in the show, but he's part of the show.
Yes.
Nice.
So thank you, Wes.
Oh man.
Shout out Wes.
Something that I would love to do is to go on a little trip with these guys and maybe go visit either tattooers or visit shops.
Yeah.
And like, I think that we should start this kind of like when you start doing conventions, you start real close and you slowly keep going a little further,
Yeah.
Or flying to a different state.
Exactly. Before you go fly to another state, let's start close and maybe go visit some shops that we've always wanted to go visit or something like that.
Well, we've been toying around with the idea of going to visit Michelle.
I think that's the perfect.
That's the first
That's
one.
the first
gonna be
one.
first
Stop number one.
that's a stop number one.
Have you guys ever done any like live besides down here?
We did at the conventions.
Tattoo
Okay,
convention.
I was gonna say like that was the live stuff that I had done, the in-person stuff, and it was a different vibe. And even at a convention, like it's a different vibe
different energy.
with like energy, and usually everybody's kind of hyped and they got a good vibe to them. But yeah, that would be cool. I think doing this at different locations would create some like fun energy.
Yeah.
Because like every location, every shop has its own
Mojo,
character.
baby.
Yeah.
It's mojo, baby.
Yeah.
Everyone's got its own mojo.
So I think that would be kind of cool, actually.
yeah, I think that'd be sick.
Yeah. Totally.
That's what Joe was doing in the beginning. He was going around different people's shops.
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. But I want to, like the way I see it in my brain, it's a combination of the conversation as much as like letting whoever we go visit tell their story without much of us in it, So there is like a moment of conversation and a moment of more of like just storytelling, like I think anytime that I visited any tattooer that I like respect and like really want to know stuff about them, anytime I've like just stepped into their area and they start showing me their like collection of like either their trophies, right? And those trophies can come in matters like, oh man, I got this painting once from like this person, I got this machine at this place with this person. Like, whoa, those are the moments, right? Like those are the ones that make you go be like, damn.
Yeah.
That's a very like, what was it? Tattoo Age from Vice?
Yes.
Like,
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's one of my favorite, like kind of like tattoo docs,
I love those.
And I feel like,
so
a
good.
combination of, having a conversation together, but also letting them tell the story of their space and how it makes them feel good every time they go. So I feel like that's part of every tattooer.
It's intimate. Like it gets really like into the nook and cranny.
Yeah,
For sure.
I feel like that would be a cool stretch for you guys too, to like figure out how to like pull those stories out, the three of you, like the interplay between you three. And then also like, how do we get them to tell that story?
we got to get Vice. Give me some money.
Man,
so, so I can hire some.
Be like, what are the right questions?
Yeah.
You know, what are the right questions?
I did a lot of like learning around interviewing when I started podcasting. And the line I loved was talk to me about. Just the talk to me about is so sort of, and I'm trying to remember who I got that from. That was like a New York DJ on, I can't remember what's his name. Ebro. Ebro is like, I think a New York.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about?
Ebro in the morning.
Ebro in the morning.
Yeah.
So he would say,
He got that voice like this. In the morning. He's like real New York guy.
He would always say, talk to me about, and I was like, okay, I gotta start using that. You pick up these little like cues to sort of start nurturing something out of somebody. And it's, I feel that would be pretty cool, different vibe and fun for you guys to play around with.
Well, guys, if you like that idea, freaking drop in the comments right now if you like it.
Let us know.
Let us know if you like that, because
you guys are down.
we're gonna make it happen no matter what. But
Yeah,
if you guys like
Patreon, yo.
yeah,
Yeah.
go to Patreon, pop it. Yeah,
We're about an hour.
we're about an hour into this.
Actually, so you were saying that you did a 3.5 hour talk.
Yeah.
How did you just air that as one episode?
Yeah, so I held on to it a little bit for a while, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it. I was in the heat of, this was like post heat of Sullen Radio. So I had started my initial podcast in 2012, and I had been looking at the inspiration for that came from comedians. This is before people even knew what podcasting was.
Yeah.
There was a few different apps that you could get certain podcasts from. And what really whet my appetite for interviewing was I had done an interview with Clayton Patterson from the Lower East Side.
He's a legend right here.
Legend.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how I got in touch with him or why I chose him to interview him. But in 2009, I was in Minnesota, and I decided I wanted to talk to other people and do some interviews. So I interviewed him, and then I interviewed Dave Gibson about lettering and his tattooing, because I loved that dude's flash. And that sort of whet my appetite for interviews. And then when I started hearing comedians talk about podcasting and having these cool conversations and then telling people where they were going to be on the weekend, I was like, well,
Yeah, that's cool.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I have a shop. I could tell people to come to my shop and maybe where I'm going to guest spot. And I have all these fun conversations all the time in the shop.
Yeah.
So I kicked it off in late 2012 and started doing it. I did it for about a year and a half, 2 years. And I was looking for a little bit bigger platform. It was so tip of the spear at that point.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple people that were doing it. Right around that same time, shout out Pon from New York. He was doing what was at that time the Not for Nothing podcast, and a couple other people in the mix with it. But I was looking for a bigger platform, and I loved what the guys at Sullen were doing, and just really art driven.
Yeah.
And so I connected with them. I went down, did some in-person interviews. And at the Long Beach show on the Queen Mary, they had a big booth, and I posted up there and did some interviews.
Are they still doing that one?
So no, that Long Beach show stopped
Right.
like a couple years ago. They tried to do it again, and then it didn't work out. And I don't think there's nothing going on there.
There's
now.
nothing going on there, man.
No.
That was one of the best shows.
It was
you
great.
mentioned you had done that
Yeah,
one?
I did that a few years.
I
and
wish
it
I
was
would have done that one.
It
Yeah.
was great.
It was really, really cool venue.
It was something
really
special when it's like
Prime.
It was like yeah.
Yeah.
Sounded awesome.
Yeah. So I went and did some of those, interviews, and, Greg James, Juan Puente,
That's awesome.
Again, some really incredible people. And I had already talked to, Shanghai Kate, and I had talked to, Jojo Ackerman was one of my third guest. And shout out Jojo, because that dude
Jojo
believed.
Ackerman. That's another name right there.
Love that dude, man, because he believed in what I was doing. And I remember being on the phone with him, telling him hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tell stories, and I'm trying to propagate positivity into the community. And he believed in me and he came on, and it basically gave credibility to what I was doing. And I got a ton of other people through that time. So I went into the Sullen sort of partnership where I started Sullen Radio, and those guys were super generous to me and helped me get more guests because they'd seen already the guests that I had on. And it started with Bob Tyrell and went down the line with Jack and Rick Walters and Boo Boo Negretti and, all these dudes, rest in peace. And, Nico, Carlos Torres, Phlox. I mean, you name it, like you can scroll through like 60 episodes of just the name, the who's who,
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
those are still available. Like, can you?
They're about to be dropped on Sullen TV's YouTube channel.
That's great.
And so
awesome.
Yeah.
Please make at least one episode that there's that talking baby in the beginning.
Amazing.
Every time I see the talking baby, dude, I'm like, oh my God, that's so good. And it does make you want to stay for a little longer, dude.
It does. It's so funny. They were thinking about doing some animation. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But so along that time, getting to, the question that you asked about Lyle's episode, I had done all that stuff, and then I interviewed Lyle, and I didn't know if I should put it out, because it's so long. I didn't know if I should put it out in segments.
How long were the other ones?
Probably, anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half.
Right. Okay.
Maybe the shortest one, 45 to 50 minutes. And I tried to keep them at an hour, but sometimes you get people that like, it's a good conversation, but the vibe just totally isn't there. And, or they're kind of locking up in places. And so you just wrap it up.
Yeah.
And so, I got to that place where I was like, okay, how do I release this? And then I finally I knew that the podcast for me was coming to an end. And I was just like, all right, I'm just going to put it out. And I put out the whole 3 hours and 15 or 3 hours and 20 minutes of it. And, it's one of the first ones that'll come out. I think they're going to release Jack's first because, he just recently passed.
Right,
and then, probably Rick's, Boo Boo's, Shanghai Kate's, and then Lyle Tuttle's. So within the first 5, you'll get Lyle's, and it's...
Oh, can't wait to catch those, man. Yeah, I can't wait to catch those.
That's going to be great.
Yeah, it was really, I feel really blessed to have had those conversations, especially with some of those people you can't have conversations with anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Having, had their trust to sit and chat with me about it. So
share.
Yeah, it was amazing. And there's, they would share about tattooing. They would share about life. They would share about their hobbies. They would share about, business. It was a game changer for me to hear how these people were, operating, again, holding themselves, being, what attributes they would want to express into tattooing and what they were doing. Yeah. It was
That's
really cool.
beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So guys, make sure you check that out when it drops. When is it going to come?
You know what? I don't have a for sure drop date, but I'll let you guys know. Yeah. And it's going to be soon. Yes. Stay tuned. And, you can certainly, I'll be dropping it on my Instagram.
Oh, we'll drop your Instagram so we can follow you.
Official Joe Swanson _FOF. You can follow me there, and when it drops, y'all will know.
Hell
I'll be excited about it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then, so speaking of longer episodes, we've had a few that I chopped down to make sure that we stay within like the hour 15 range. We recently just did, all right. So last week with Joe Cap and Lalo and Christian, that was a 3-hour episode.
Yeah.
There were some
3. I missed out on 3 hours.
You missed a good one.
Wow.
So there was some parts in there that I cut that I feel like maybe we shouldn't be airing on this stuff.
Put it on the Patreon. Why not?
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, there was
More than the religious episode?
Yeah.
All right. So,
We had some audio issues that we cut a little bit, and I wound up bringing it down to about an hour 45.
Yeah.
Which is still longer than most of our episodes. But so we're about an hour and 15 in right now.
Yeah.
everybody who's listening right now, they're the diehard guys. So I check the stats every now and then on YouTube. We usually get like a retention average around 20, 25 minutes. So if you're still listening right now, you're a diehard listener.
Shout out to you.
Yeah, shout out to you. You guys, let us know, do you want longer episodes?
Yeah.
And if you want to stick around and listen to 2 hour long, 3 hour long, and I don't think we're going to do that a lot, but if there are some that go that long, should I not cut it? Let me know and I'll make some adjustments.
I feel like the audio listener person likes the longer kind of episodes, but I think like the guys like to watch the videos. Digest it in like 20-minute increments. Just like, I'd rather watch a Netflix series for 3 hours of 30-minute episodes.
Yeah.
You know what though? I bumped into a lot of people that on my own, separate from you guys, that have not only complimented the podcast, but they're like a lot of diehards. They'll always tell me like, oh, while I'm preparing a drawing, this even tattooing, like you guys are in the background. And I'm listening to you guys as I do everything. And
shout out to the homie Omar who I met like over the weekend. Like he was like, hey man, when I'm on my drive to go upstate, like that's what I'm bumping.
Dude, I love that.
Like, oh, it's
you guys,
great.
You guys rule.
Yeah, we got some diehard fans we really appreciate it. There was one guy that he DM'd me the week that we didn't put out an episode. He's like, hey man, is there an episode this week? I was like, nah, sorry, we weren't able to get one out. He's like, all right, I guess I'll have to repeat another one that I've seen already. I'm like, cool, man.
That's down. Yeah.
You guys love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I played around with that. I had some longer ones, like Seth Safari interview I had. It was really long. And I ended up breaking up into part 1 and part 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And, that worked. And I think but I think you're right with audio. You're on your bike, you're on the treadmill, you're on a drive, and you can just listen. Whereas now I will consume YouTube that same way sometimes, but I tend to like break YouTube up into more choppy bits. Now I will consume the whole thing, but it'll take me longer than just an audio, or if I'm listening to it on Spotify.
Right.
For sure.
So yeah, I don't know what the right answer to that is. I suppose it's good to you to poll. Poll the people.
That's true.
What do you want?
What do you want? Let me know.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming out and hanging out with us. It's been awesome having you, man, and listening to share your stories, man.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's been a real honor to be here. The love for tattooing is just like is peaked down here in this little spot, and I appreciate it. And I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Shout out to all you guys.
It's super special that you were willing to make a trip dedicated just for this too. That's
absolutely.
Something.
Look, this is the big time. This is the big time. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, I consider like I somewhat started podcasting and tattooing, and now I've, risen to the big time, which is like the best show with the best dudes, video. And it's amazing, man. I was so stoked to come here.
One of these days we'll say live from New York. It's the Honest Tattooer podcast.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it right now.
Well, guys, thanks so much for coming out and hanging out another week, and for listening to us, and for all of your support. We appreciate it, and we hope to see you next week.
Should we do an after show?
I don't know. Maybe. Why not? If you're tuning in, maybe we'll see you the after show. If not, have a great night.
All right. If you guys want to check out the after show, patreon.com/honest tattooer. Thank you.
Peace.
I love it.
Peace.